Yeah, there's a whole new scam going on right now, and unfortunately there's 400 cases. Could you imagine signing on the dotted line, buying that slightly used vehicle, thinking you literally got yourself the deal of a century? Well, unfortunately, you know what, everyone? I've heard some bad stories lately. There's a story from North Carolina, a Nissan dealership that literally was washing titles. They were doing something that was really, really creepy. And unfortunately, if you've never been the victim of one of these, count yourself lucky, because there's way too many victims. Getting a used car in today's market is very, very difficult. There's been a shortages, and dealers have been doing whatever they can to get their hands on used vehicles. But unfortunately, what's been going on, there's a dealer and there's 400 charges laid for what they've been doing to people. And I hope that you're not one of them, but basically they take a vehicle and it's used, and it could have a title on it that's not perfect. For example, it might have a lien against it. Even worse, it might even have some flood damage. Maybe it had a collision and it was repaired. Maybe it was a write-off and repaired. Everybody thinks, well, you get your Carfax or your car proof and you're good to go. And generally, that's the go-to. Everybody knows that you've got to do your background, you've got to do your homework on that, and you have to get those checks done, absolutely. But unfortunately, what's happening now is there's a procedure going on, because not all US states actually enforce this crime. It's essentially fraud, where they have a used vehicle, the seller is able to take it to another state, one of those states that does not recognize this as being a flaw or a fraud, and they actually get it retitled. And so they can take a vehicle that would normally be worth half of its original, half of its value, because of maybe it was in an accident and it was actually written off, and so they patched it all together, and then they take it to another state and they're actually able to wash that. That is brutal, and that's actually happening right now. Unfortunately, again, 400 cases, North Carolina. There's a GM and some other salespeople involved in this little rigmarole. Now, unfortunately, you don't know. Maybe this car here had some flood history, because this one came from down east. And maybe this car here had a front-end collision that they patched up and made it look really, really nice. But you would never really know just by looking at it from a distance. And maybe this car here was bottomed out somewhere and had a bad collision, and they had to fix some undercarriage damage, and it got a little black mark or a speck on its title. Nobody wants those types of cars if that's what's going on. And the reality is there's many, many, many customers that have been subject to this. And unfortunately, about 400 cases have been claimed where people signed it on the dotted line and became the victim of such a scam. Now, some of these people might be charged, but the reality is some of them might, this goes on across the nation. And what sort of states are you wanting that you really have to be cautious about? Well, there's a few states that you have to be aware of. Sadly, way too many states. For example, California is one of them. Texas, Washington, Tennessee, Mississippi, Illinois, New Jersey, and North Carolina. Unfortunately, are a pile of states. Literally from corner to corner, you could draw a beeline of states that are okay or seem to be okay legally, with the prospect of some of these manufacturers actually doing that and essentially performing some level of title washing, because it isn't necessarily captured and it's sort of a gap within the laws of that governing state. But if you're not sure what to look for, here's some basic tips you can do at home, and I'll share some other things that are guaranteed to help you. May not perfect it, but unfortunately all these dirt bags are going to do this anyway, and it's clearly on the rise. But there's some basic things. Obviously, you want to do a lien check. You can do that either through some of the auto checks, Carfax, for example. You definitely want to do that. You can maybe do a pre-purchase inspection, but even before you get to that point, you can do a walk around. Remember, flood damaged vehicles often, it's kind of hard to tell by looking, but flood damaged vehicles often from the outside, they look fine. It's not until you look down in there and you look under the seats and the carpet, you might find it to be kind of crunchy. And then you might even look at the base of the seat rails, and you may actually find that there's rust on it. If you find rust at the seat rails or crunchy carpet under there, that might be a sure indication that you actually have some water damage from before. You also want to do other things you can do yourself before you even pay the money and do some of these other inspections. You can have a look around, make sure from a damage perspective that you have body panels look like they match, that they don't have one corner that's freshly painted. If it has paint protection film, that it all looks like it matches up well. You want to make sure that, these lines all match up, everything looks good there. Take a look, make sure these panels match with those panels, match with these panels, that all adjacent panels match, because sometimes when they fix a body panel, they blend it. So, you might find that blending right here, but compare it to a 2 panels over. You know, it could be a full side that they repainted, but definitely check out the panels. Look for uneven paint, you know, gaps and places like that. Definitely look for overspray on areas like this, on the trim of all over the vehicle. You might find actual issues like this. You can see already there's some white around there. That could be just wax, or it could be some overspray. You want to look at uneven panel gaps, color mismatching, and of course check down in the jams. They're a surefire way. Sometimes people do that splash and dash type of paint job and then they don't do the jams properly. You definitely want to check out the jams. So open the doors on both sides, check all the jams, and make sure everything looks straight and square. So you definitely can do some basic checks yourself. So again, another thing that you can do is a pre-purchase inspection. So if you like the way the vehicle looks, you don't see the crunchy carpet, you don't see weird panel gaps and issues with the body, well, another quick easy thing you can do, you might want to spend, if you get closer, don't just write it off and say, oh, it's only a $20,000 vehicle, it doesn't matter. Well, yeah, that $20,000 vehicle can quickly be relegated to $5,000 detail if it's been written off. So you definitely want to get a pre-purchase inspection. Now, that's not going to find everything, but often mechanics know the areas, they're looking for the key spots, not just mechanically, but they usually give the vehicle a quick rundown, and they'll know pretty quickly if there's something more significant going on there. So definitely want to get a pre-purchase inspection, check your Carfax, CarProof. You might even go to the insurance company if you've got that capability, and they could pull up a VIN and see if there's any other history associated with it. There could even be some damage tagged to that vehicle somewhere that the insurance company might be able to identify with. So there's a lot of opportunities that you can actually use and a lot of different resources, but don't just write it off. Unless it's a $2,000 winter beater, any money is money that's hard earned and you don't want to waste it. So I hope that helps everyone. Definitely don't be caught by those scammers and those scoundrels that are trying to take your money and sell you a 2-bit coin for $55. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, everyone, and thanks for joining Easy Car Buying.